Some bourbons you just can't say no to. Here's 10 that I'm always gonna hunt and buy. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Bourbon Hutch, and thanks so much for joining me on this journey through the world of whiskey. So, as I've journeyed through the world of whiskey and started adding a lot more to my collection, there have arisen some bottles that I just absolutely love. Ones that have convinced me that I either always need one on my shelves and whenever it gets low I have to replace it, or more limited like semi-annual releases that I know whenever they come out I'm definitely going to look for one and try to grab it. So I figured I'd put together a list of 10 of those bottles to help inform you just the things that I think are really worth it in the whiskey world right now, and bottles that I've absolutely come to know and love. So without further ado, let's dive into that list. My number one and the easiest pick on this list is Knob Creek 12. Honestly, if you only let me ever buy one bottle of bourbon ever again, like I had to choose one to buy over and over again, it might be Knob Creek 12. I just think it's that well balanced, that good age, full of vanillas, raisins, and oak. It just hits my profile perfectly. So that's the first one. All right, next on the list is one that's actually kind of a standout among its own particular lineup. And I'm not sure how many people share that opinion, but I think it's really good. And that is 1792 bottled in bond. So if you ask me, out of the full proof, the regular small batch, and the sweet wheat I've tasted, I have not tasted the single barrel, so can't quite give an opinion there, but my favorite is honestly the bottled in bond. For me, this has a little bit of like an espresso note, just a touch of bitterness that actually adds a layer to the sweetness that's also in here. So I love this bottle, especially for around 50-55 bucks. It is a little bit harder to find, a little bit more allocated, so can be spotty. So that's why whenever I see it, I make sure to grab it if it's at a reasonable price. All right, next on the list is a much more recent addition to the collection, but just has really impressed me since I cracked it open, which is J Bowman Single Barrel. Just really good whiskey. Buffalo Trace distillate aged out at A. Smith Bowman Distilling in Virginia. Really good, flavorful, full of fruits, apples, cherries, good brown sugar. For 90 proof, a really solid product. I have only ever seen this once. It took me nearly 2 years to find it in my market, so you might have it all around you available, and that's great. For me, it took quite a long time, so anytime I see it for a reasonable price from now on, I'm gonna be sure to grab one. All right, while we're on Buffalo Trace distillate, let's just stick with it. My next bottle is E.H. Taylor Small Batch. I'm gonna put this over here so it doesn't block your view of my beautiful face. But seriously, this is really good. Probably the best staple Buffalo Trace product that I've tasted. I'd take this over Eagle Rare. I'd take it over Weller 107. I think it's just really good stuff. Full of good flavors. Again, that kind of apple fruitiness. Very similar to this J Bowman. In fact, I might have to do a little comparison among these because I think they're kind of on the same plane. Obviously, this is very difficult to find, very allocated in a lot of areas. So when I do see it, if I do see it for somewhere around $60 to $70, I will grab it. I think it's worth that. MSRP's $40, but I think it's worth more than that. So this is one of those ones I'm always looking for. Next bottle on the list gets us to another distillery where we're actually going to feature 3 bottles because I'm just a huge fan of everything they do, and that's going to be Elijah Craig Toasted Barrel. $50 MSRP. It's super full of like rich s'mores, marshmallow, good brown sugar. I just really like this toasted product. It's one of the toasted finishes that I've tasted I've really enjoyed. So I think that this is one that whenever I see it somewhere around MSRP, I'm willing to grab it, even to have a backup, because I think it's just really good whiskey. Let's stick with Heaven Hill for our next 2 bottles. We'll do them as a 2-for-1, and that is Elijah Craig Barrel Proof And yeah, you guessed it, larceny barrel proof. So both of these are some of my favorite annual releases. They each have 3 batches a year, and I'm always trying to get every single batch. The quality does vary batch to batch. So like, for instance, I've got the C923 pulled out for Elijah Craig. One of the best whiskeys I've ever tasted. And I've got, which batch of larceny is this? C923 of larceny as well, which I think is a middle of the road batch for me. Very good, but not one of my ultimate favorites. So with that in mind, when you hunt Elijah Craig and larceny, it's often good to just check and see which batches are really standouts, because I understand not everybody needs all 3 batches every single year. It's good for me because I have a YouTube channel and I can feature them against each other and things like that, and I do like the collecting aspect, but I do think overall these 2 products are worth MSRP, if not a little bit over them consistently. So they're always going to deliver pretty good quality. All right, made some room here for our last 3 bottles. These 3 are really, really good. Not that any of these on this list are bad. The whole point is they're great, but these 3 are really, really good. Before we dive into them, I do want to say, if you're enjoying all the content coming out of the channel, would love to have you aboard as a subscriber to the Bourbon Hutch for 2024 and beyond. While you're at it, hit that like button and then comment down below. What are the handful, maybe 5, or if you want to do full 10 just like I did, of bourbons or whiskeys that you're always hunting or you're always willing to grab? Okay, let's get into our last 3. First on that list is one of my favorite releases from all of 2023, and that is Jack Daniel's Single Barrel Proof Rye. This is going to be now a more regular release from Jack Daniel's. It's high proof. Mine's 128.5 proof, but these are often in the 130s. So complex, so interesting, so rich, very full of flavor. If you haven't tried it for around 70 to 75 bucks MSRP, try picking one up. I'm pretty much going to guarantee you're going to like it if you do like rye. And this is a good bourbon drinker's kind of a rye. Very forward with like fruit, like banana and brown sugar. So I think you'll like it if you're a bourbon drinker. All right, let's move on to our last 2 bottles. One is another kind of batched product. Comes out different times a year, and I think it's just been firing on all cylinders, and that is Maker's Mark Wood Finishing Series. So the first chapter ended with barrel entry proof, but now they've announced the second chapter has come, and there's going to be 5 more releases at least, which is great. I selected BRT02 here, one of my favorites. Rich, full of flavor, good oak on it. I think these wood finishing series products for around $70 are always a good value and always worth picking up. And for me, I'm just always wondering what the next release is going to be and keeping an eye out for it and willing to grab it for around that $70 mark. All right, let's get to our last bottle, one that I think a lot of people are going to agree with on this list, and that is Four Roses Single Barrel Strength. 10 recipes that you can collect. Take your pick. If you're a huge fan of sort of black cherry or berries, you're probably going to find a recipe that has that. If you're a huge fan of spice, bold stuff in your face, there's a recipe for that. My particular one is spicy and fruity at the same time, and it's really, really good. This is one that I'm always looking for another variation of it for a reasonable price, and pretty much always willing to spend a little bit of money on to grab because I think it's high quality whiskey. All right, everybody, that's gonna do it. These are 10 bourbons. Well, there's technically 1 rye, so 10 whiskeys that I'm always willing to hunt. They've proven to me that they're high quality and worth the hunt, and I'm willing to grab when I see it. And these are always hopefully gonna be staples in my collection. Again, let me know in the comments below what you think of my list and what would go on your own personal list. Until I see you guys again for another video, all I can say is keep drinking good whiskey. I hope your hunting goes well, and cheers.